Charlotte Fraser, who had never walked out of anything in her life, stood leaning against the heavy wooden door of the old officers' club. She didn't mind that rainwater from a leaky gutter was being blown in spatters across the expensive little black dress she'd bought that morning, or that her perfectly blow-dried hair was about to be ruined. She didn't care that she'd left her coat abandoned on a peg in the cloakroom. The one thing she did know for sure was that there was no way on earth she was returning to the St. George function suite, where right now, the owner of the Happy Holstein dairy farm with his farmyard milkshake vending machine was being awarded Scottish Tourism Innovator of the Year. It wasn't that she had a particular aversion to cows, or to dairy farmers for that matter. She'd grown up in the countryside surrounded by both. But she'd survived an hour of the award ceremony with a polite smile plastered on her face, clapping in all the right places as the winners were announced. She'd arranged her features into the appropriate position, grateful to be nominated, just like an Oscar nominee, when her thriving holiday rental business, Applemore Cottages, came runner-up in the holiday rentals category. Then she'd made polite conversation with several people, none of whom had anything interesting to say during the break in proceedings. She'd looked around the room at the groups of people, all holding their glasses, their cheeks stiff with smiles which they'd held in place for far too long. Then she downed her flat gin and tonic, complete with rapidly melting ice, and then prepared to return to her seat for the second half of the event. There had been a squeal of feedback as the microphone on stage was turned back on. The backdrop changed from a generic picture postcard shot of a Highland cow standing in a field of heather to the sleek and exclusive-looking logo of Barton Granger, the corporate sponsors of the event. Charlotte had noticed their table as she went to the bar. 3 men on a corporate box-ticking exercise, sharply dressed in well-tailored suits. They sat taking up space with their chairs pushed back from the table, legs spread in a comfortable demonstration of male dominance. Where everyone else had 2 fairly bog-standard bottles of red and white vin ordinaire in the middle of their table, they had 3 bottles of champagne and an expensive-looking floral arrangement. She was squeezing past one of their high-backed chairs when the owner of one of the suits stood up, sliding his chair rapidly backwards on the polished wood of the floor, bashing into her knee. Charlotte had given a yelp of pain.
"Sorry, I didn't see you there."
The culprit turned to look over his expensively suited shoulder at Charlotte, and she gave a sharp intake of breath, because he looked completely out of place. Tall, with a slightly untidy dark fringe of hair which flopped over a tanned forehead. She tried to play it cool. "It's fine." The words came out as a small squeak. The corners of his mouth quirked upwards slightly, and he held her gaze for a second. His eyes were deep brown and met hers with a wicked twinkle, as if the owner was looking for mischief. Her heart bashed against her ribs, and she ducked her head, moving on, resisting the urge to turn back to gaze at him again, just to see if he really was as handsome as she'd thought.